What's up, Candace?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm good. What's going on in your world?
Well, just having mom guilt and wondering how much to overshare, undershare with my children as they get older,
All right, tell me more.
Okay, so me and my husband, we've been married for 9 years now, but 5 years ago, 4 years into our marriage, he did have a spout of infidelity. And of course, I found out.
Hold on, a what of infidelity?
Oh. He had infidelity on his part. I found out.
Okay, but you said it was a what of infidelity? Like a speck? Is that what you said?
I called it a spout.
A spout.
It was one incident. One incident.
Just a little spout. Just a little
spout.
Whoopsie doo. Okay.
Minor lapse in judgment,
Okay. So he had a bad evening, and that 5 years ago, and y'all decided to stay together and work it out.
We did.
Okay.
We went to marriage counseling. We have done so much therapizing on our own.
Okay.
And our marriage is fantastic now.
Okay.
And I heard a show not too long ago of yours where a woman said that she's in the same room as her husband. They're going to touch. And that's me and my husband. So, we're great now.
Okay.
But, my children, as they get older, they're going to have relationships. We came across some pictures of when we were separated, and the boys asked me, why aren't you in these pictures? And I told them, oh, you were with just your dad, and we just needed some time apart right then. And that's all I said, and I moved on. And then from that day on, I've had that question of, do I ever say more? When they're having a hard time in their divorce or whatever relationship later on, do I ever say more?
How old are they now?
Well, now they're definitely not the age. They are 8, 6, and then the ones that were not around at the time are 2 and 3.
Okay.
So very, very, very young.
Okay.
And this is not their cross to bear, and I understand that.
Sure.
I do not want to be like your dad, and their daddy is their hero.
Yeah.
And I don't want to taint that.
Can I ask you a hard question?
Mm-hmm.
Your marriage is still together in large part because of the work your husband did, but also in large part because you chose to stay. And you've done a ton of work too, fair?
Yes, a ton.
Okay, this is a hard question to ask you, but on some days, do you look out upon your family? Maybe you look out in the yard and your husband's playing with those 4 boys, and you just want to stand up on the steps of your home and yell hey, I need credit for this?
No, because he gives it to me.
Okay.
He does.
So your choice to tell them isn't why would you tell them? Let me ask you that.
Because it is what a lot of our relationship is, not what it's built on, but the trust and the openness that came of it. I didn't know all that stuff when going into marriage. And I wonder, how do I tell them those lessons, I guess, without divulging too much and destroying their image of their parents that are very, very happily married now.
Sure. I guess it would depend on the context, and I guess it would depend on the questions they're asking. And in many ways, I think it's a joint story to tell.
Yeah.
And you're right. I would wait till they're adults. I don't see any reason why to bring it up now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say they're 17 or 16 and they're dating somebody and they get cheated on and it breaks their heart. You can say things like, I was cheated on too. And I know what that feels like. Oh, you were? And you'd be like, I don't want to talk about the details of it, but I've had a broken heart too. There's ways to slowly have that conversation, and there's ways that honestly, if y'all ever choose to tell the story in public, like at a local church, or y'all decide to write a blog about it, you'll need to address it with them first. So they don't hear about it secondhand. As I'm sitting here thinking about it, and I've never had this thought before, but in a way, I almost feel like it's your husband's story to tell them.
I felt that way also because when we were going through it, part of his therapy was to write things down because it's hard for men to say things out loud.
Yeah.
And he wrote it in the point of view of like telling our kids. And he wrote a letter apologizing to them even, and he still has that.
Mm-hmm.
And will he ever give that to them? I have no idea. But yeah, in a big way, I do feel like if it was going to be said, it would be his thing to tell.
Yeah. And it might come a point when they're 25 and 26 and somebody's breaking up with getting, their marriage is on the rocks, like all young marriages are. And you might tell them, hey, I'm going to sit with my hurting kids or child and let them know I've been there too. And this is your story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully he's a man of character and will walk alongside his sons and his daughters and say, here's what happened. And they'll have this many X number of years to show what healing looks like.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
This just came up. Is it sitting on you for some reason right now? Or did it just happen to pop into your head and you just thought you'd call?
We were flipping through those pictures about a week ago, and that was the first time I've ever came close to having to say, there was a time that me and your dad weren't together, and you did spend a weekend with him alone, and I was not there.
How long were you all apart?
We were separated for a little over a month.
Okay.
And he did everything that a man should do that did something like that. He did everything that he was supposed to do to get me back and to prove everything.
That's cool.
Or I would not be here.
Yeah. Well, and did he talk to him?
To the kids when they looked at the pictures?
Uh-huh.
He was not there. He was at work. I told him about it when he got home, and we just moved on.
Okay.
So obviously, I've been thinking about it, but I told him, we were going to talk today, and he told me it's a question he's often wondered himself. So he was curious to know what you'd say.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. My son's 14, and we are just now entering into a season when he's asking bigger questions and harder questions, and I don't think it's appropriate. If I had that in my background, it would not be appropriate for me to tell him now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It would be appropriate for me to say, hey, buddy, I've messed things up big time. And I had to go do X, Y, and Z. Well, what do you mean mess up? I had some core convictions that when you get older, I'll tell you about. But I can't imagine sitting down and laying that on a child while that's a lot for them to carry.
And I do not want to do that.
I know, of course.
Like I said, I do not want to change their image of their dad.
Well, it's not. They need to know their dad's not perfect.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean? And does he ask for forgiveness? Does he say, I'm sorry? Things like that already?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Good.
I mean, 5 years in, he still makes every effort.
That's cool. I want y'all to be very careful about what you just said, image protection.
Okay.
Because that will destroy your kids. They need to know mom and dad are fallible. Mom and dad aren't perfect. And both mom and dad love each other sideways and forwards and backwards. And I think then as the stories come out, there'll be disappointment. There will be heartbreak. There'll be, I can't believe that. But there never will have been an image to prop up.
Yeah. And I don't want to tell them to be like, oh, we're a survival story,
Exactly.
I do not want that.
Yeah.
But we are not a perfect relationship, but a lot of our friends watching us go through our relationship and seeing how he did and how their people didn't do, it showed them that, what should happen. Not saying that we did everything right, but showing with them like what effort looks like.
Candace, can I just tell you, it's okay to say we did everything right. We did everything right as we knew to do it after something like that.
As best we could.
Yeah, and I want you to not downplay that because you beat the odds, and y'all not only beat the odds, y'all rebuilt something. Sounds like it's stronger. Sounds like it is more united, and it's a testament to this is what legacy change looks like.
Yeah,
right.
And we always say that we suck. It sucks that it happened, but we're so glad that it did because it brought out trust and complete vulnerability in us, and that I didn't know that marriage took so much work.
I don't think any of us do, otherwise we wouldn't do it. But also, I hear that sentiment so often behind closed doors.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change anything, and it was the worst time of our life. And it's hard to explain that because then someone's going to be like, oh, should I just go cheat? No, of course not. Dumb. But
it's also hard to admit.
But it's hard to admit, like, we are simply here because something really tough happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, this is so dependent on the reason, the question, whatever. I mean, the story would ever come out, who's telling what and how, the age of the kids, the maturity. There's some 18-year-olds that could hear this just fine. There's some 17-year-olds that could probably hear this just fine. And there are some 23-year-olds that, geez, man, it'd be a zoo. So I think it's just going to be context dependent. But I think that's something we would hold off for a long time. But I do want to be very careful about any sort of like image protection or any sort of look at how great everybody is. At the same time, it's important for my wife to say to my son, especially, but to my daughter also, hey, your dad just did X, Y, and Z. I want y'all to see that because that's what a good man does. And I want, I do the same thing with my kids when I point out something great my wife did. And yesterday happened. Yesterday I was with my son and my wife called and I had said, hey, can you do X, Y, and Z? I'm in the middle of another crazy diet and this is real important to me for the evening. And she called when I was almost to the house, and she's like, hey, I didn't do that thing. Or I did it, but I didn't check. Anyway. And my son could see it on me, and he said, well, what's wrong? What did Mom just say? And I told him, hey, I asked for this thing, and she wasn't able to make it happen. I'm disappointed. But then he got to also see me walk in the door and treat her with respect and kindness and dignity and to then make do with what I had in front of me. And so he got to see, oh, you get disappointed sometimes and then you go do the next right thing. You don't throw a temper tantrum. You don't yell and scream. You don't curse your wife, whatever. So I think it's important for our kids to see the good stuff and the tough stuff and to always humanize us. But never tell your kids because you want them to be like, wow, Mom or Dad is amazing. And never tell your kids, about things you've done in the past because you feel bad and you want them to carry it with you, right? You're ashamed or you feel guilty and like, I need to bring my kids along. But if your story in the past can be a guide for your kids or a way to connect, I think it can be incredibly important. And I think always sparing the gory details when possible. They don't need to know the ins and outs, no pun intended. They don't need to know the gory details. The kids don't need that images of their parents in their minds. But letting your kids know on a number of different issues. No, I've been there. Mom and Dad have been there. Whew. Can we sit with you? That can be a gift sometimes. Thank you so much for the call, Candace. Much, much appreciated. Have a great week. And congrats to you and your husband for, man, experiencing the one of the worst things that can happen to a couple and then deciding, okay, we're going to rebuild. And him going first. Kudos to that dude. I'm proud of him, man. And continuing to create a new marriage that y'all are proud of, that give y'all peace and hope, and that let your kids see that reconciliation is real and a good marriage is worth fighting for.